Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson was born on December 10, 1830, to a wealthy family in Amherst, Massachusetts. Because she was wealthy, she had a good education. She was first educated at Amherst Academy. At 17, she began college at Mount Holyoke Female Seminary. She became ill in the spring of her first year and didn't return. Some speculate she didn't return because she didn't fit in, others that she wouldn't swear an oath to follow Jesus. Some think her father just wouldn't let her return because he felt like she'd been educated enough. She was a woman, after all. Dickinson is known for wearing white, but the reason is unknown. This simple white dress has become an icon of the poet. She was even buried in white and enclosed in a white casket. Something that's unusual about her is that she was a recluse. She never left her family's house and barely even her room for any reason from the age of 23 to her death at 56. That's a long time. She did leave once or twice, of course, to see a doctor before her death. Leading scholars speculate that she may have been agoraphobic, which is the fear of open spaces or crowds. It could also have been the result of the deaths of family and friends. It's also possible that she was protecting herself after some failures in love. There were a few men in her life that she may have fallen in love with, but they were either married or they did not feel the same way about her. It's also speculated that she could have been in love with her sister-in-law, and they're guessing this based on some letters between them that they've read. If she was truly homosexual, she would have repressed these feelings because no one was openly gay at that time. But even though she shut herself away, she still had a few friends that she greatly valued, and she wrote them many letters. Not having conventional religious views may also have contributed to her isolation. She refused to sign an oath to dedicate her life to Jesus and dropped out of school. Even so, she clearly had a belief in God and heaven, but it was different from those of her peers and family. For her, nature was her church. In a well-known poem of hers, she says, "Some keep the Sabbath going to church. I keep it staying at home, with a bobolink for a chorister and an orchard for a dome. Some keep the Sabbath in surplice. I just wear my wings. And instead of tolling the bell for church, our little sexton sings. God preaches, a noted clergyman, and the sermon is never long. So instead of getting to heaven at last, I'm going all along." Notice in this poem that she talks about her house being her church, about a bobolink, a bird, being her chorister, and the orchard was her dome of the church, that she wears her wings, and instead of tolling the bell, it's a bird that sings. God is the clergyman, not a minister. So to her, that is what church is all about. Well, Dickinson didn't have much of a publishing career during her life. She sent poems to Thomas Wentworth Higginson, who was a literary critic and a family friend. He recognized her talent, but he tried to improve her poems because of its unusual style. This made her lose interest in publishing. However, between 1850 and 1866, 10 of her poems appeared in newspapers. All were published anonymously and probably without her knowledge. She died of Bright's disease, which is kidney failure, in 1886. She left this world as mysteriously and isolated as she lived it. The visitation was held in her home with only close friends and family, and her coffin was carried out the back of her door to the family cemetery in their backyard. After her death, over 1,800 poems were discovered. They were heavily edited and published by her old friend Higginson and friend Mabel Loomis Todd. Then, in 1955, Thomas Johnson produced a collection of her poems in 3 volumes, restoring her original capitalization and punctuation that the previous publishers had edited. What makes her poetry so special? The reason that they felt that they needed to edit it so heavily. Some things that are interesting about Dickinson's poetry is that she often wrote in quatrains, which is a stanza with a group of 4 lines. She also liked to use
unusual rhythm patterns. The rhythm of one line would be different from the rhythm of the line before it. In traditional poetry, the rhythm tends to stay the same throughout the entire poem. She also liked to use dashes and capitalization instead of commas and semicolons. This is probably what they most edited. We're going to be reading the non-edited versions with the dashes and the capitalization. The editors took those out and replaced them with commas and semicolon to be more like traditional poetry. She also used an unusual rhyming pattern. She wouldn't go with your traditional A, B types of patterns. She would just do whatever she wanted with them. She also liked to use slant rhyme, which is a rhyme that isn't exact. An exact rhyme would be something like ear and hear. Those two rhyme exactly. A slant rhyme would be more like proved and loved. They kind of sound alike. They have the same ending of the sound, but they don't rhyme exactly 100%. She also liked to use metaphors, similes, and personification, which we've talked about a lot, so I don't feel like I need to explain those now. The subjects of her poem were things like her inner world, herself, love, nature, faith, pain and suffering, and death. Here we can see both romanticism and realism elements, just like Whitman had. The romantic themes being love, self, and nature, and the more realistic themes being pain and suffering and death. Dickinson actually seemed to be a bit obsessed with death. Her home was near a cemetery, so she saw many funeral processions pass by her home. 33 friends and family died between 1851 and 1854 in a 4-year period. That's a lot. She also experienced firsthand the deaths of her father, who was very important to her, her mother, and sadly her 8-year-old nephew, Thomas Gilbert, known as Gib, Dickinson. In a rare excursion from her home, Dickinson came to sit by his bedside the night before he died of typhoid fever. His death was devastating to her. He was very much loved. Her own health deteriorated swiftly thereafter, and some scholars have associated her decline with the wrenching loss of this beloved little boy. What is Dickinson's legacy? Well, she was one of the greatest American poets. She was quite ahead of her time. And she's one of America's first major female poets, and one of the first major female writers in all of Western literature, actually. Along with Walt Whitman, Dickinson is considered to be one of the two great giants of American poetry in the 19th century. In fact, when her eventual publisher first read her poetry, he thought Walt Whitman may have influenced her. However, she denied it, saying she would never read his poetry because she heard it was disgraceful. However, together they are considered to be the founders of a uniquely American poetic voice, and they were both great influences on modern American poetry.